This 1947 LG15 features an original cabin coupling and also has an original type Scammell trailer. It appears here in the colours it first worked in for United Dairies in London. Paul Badger's latest acquisition is a 1961 Scammell Mountaineer 65-ton ballast tractor. This was new to the cohort and worked on mines emergency rescue. It had only done 11,500 miles when acquired by Paul, so wasn't in too bad a condition. This 1958 Scammell Junior Constructor was new to Pickford's as a ballast tractor. It has now been converted to a recovery vehicle and can still be seen in daily use around Merthyr Tydfil in Wales. Pete Skinner, chairman of the Scammell Owners and Enthusiasts Club, owns this 1945 Scammell, which is in its original livery. Prior to preservation, it only had two owners, the second of which, Jimmy Miller of Whitchurch, used the vehicle for transporting a showman's engine. A second junior constructor on display is this 1966 example. It is shortly to be painted in its original livery of Sunter Brothers from Northallerton. It is believed at one time to have worked on snow ploughing duties in Lincolnshire. This Scammell Highwayman was originally built in 1960 as a ballast tractor and is not a conversion like many. It is very low geared and has a top speed of only 30 miles per hour.
Dave Parkin has a wealth of preservation knowledge passed on by his father. He is now the proud owner of a collection of commercial vehicles.
We got interested in vehicle preservation through my dad's work, which was a heavy goods vehicle driver, which he has been all his life. He was an HGV driver and driving instructor in the army. So consequently I covered a lot of miles sort of riding on the bonnet in his vehicle as he worked and riding shotgun, so to speak. When I started work as an apprentice motor mechanic, which there again was on commercial vehicles. So, as one can imagine, you got quite involved. You got used to working on them, got used to driving them in and out of garages, and when Father first bought his first vehicle to restore, I was sort of thrown in at the deep end. Not knowing a lot about old vehicles at the time, more into the modern stuff, it was quite a challenge, which I got quite interested in as the time went on. Father used to knock about with the Fernleys of Castleford, which were well known for rallying steam wagons at the time. He used to fire for Mr. Walter Fernley's Foden steam wagon. Consequently, I took a bit of interest in that. As time went by, Father got a chance to purchase one in scrap condition, which he did, and we brought it home to Castleford, towed home at the time, because it was by a very old Albion diesel wagon. We started then in earnest, and we bought it in June 1963, and by August it was in a fairly decent condition, enough to take it to its first rally, which we did under its own power. Consequently, the vehicle was restored over a period of roughly 18-20 years, is now owned by Mr. Crawley, which father moved on a good few years ago to make way for a bit faster vehicle, being a Sentinel steam wagon, which was somewhat easier to get about at the time, as we were both working lads, so to speak. As I mentioned earlier, father was on long distance haulage at the time, so he had no idea what time he was going to get home from work. I was a mechanic which involved 5.5 days a week work normally, so when we had to go anywhere to rallies or anything, we had to have time off work. So the obvious thing to do was get something a little bit faster, a little bit easier to get about. Then father had to finish work owing to ill health. We were no longer able to get them about, as many people know, more or less a two-man job. So as he had to finish work, we sort of moved the steamers on and went into the diesel side of the preservation, which is a damn sight easier to get about, as one can imagine. When you get to a rally, all you have to do is get out of the cab and lock the door, so to speak. No waiting for 2 hours to raise steam, as with a steamer. So we came into preservation, sort of in steam, and sort of finished up in diesels. The Showman's van, that's a 1961 Foden KG 613, which the model type means it's a KG type, 6-cylinder engine, 13-ton gross weight. It was one of two specially built for Fuller Smith and Turner breweries at Chiswick in London. It was actually built for trailer work, henceforth it being a 6-cylinder and only a 13-tonner, as most KGs were 14-tonners. It's 3-line air brakes, Gardner 6LW engine in it, the super low 5-speed gearbox, and at this moment it still has its Showman's 150 amp Tillings generator in the back. Originally it had a crew cab specially built for it by Bauer Brothers at, I think it's Congleton. They built the cab for Fodens. As I said, they built two specially for Fuller Smith and Turners for using in and around the London area delivering beer. But towing a trailer in and around the city of London, as one can imagine, it wasn't really a viable proposition at that time. So I think they scrapped one, and this other one, we believe it was Fleet number 1, was sold on to a Showman after 2 years of use. So the Showman, Mr. Dirry at Scunthorpe, had it from being 2 years old. And it still has the first body on which he put on it, which is a Luton van. Hopefully in the near future, if we can get some parts, timber parts for the cab, we're hoping to put it back to a crew cab and the body as it was when it was new. The Foden flat, it was supplied new in 1962, that's also a KG Foden, but it's a 414, which there again, as I said earlier, it's a KG type, 4-cylinder, 14-tonner. It was supplied new to Shipston's Brewery at New Basford, Nottingham, known as the Star Brewery, originally having a brass star on each side of the cab, and just the name Shipston's. It was used for carrying beer in and around the Nottinghamshire area. It's a pretty basic machine really, as I said, 14 ton, 4-cylinder Gardner 4LW, basic 4-speed gearbox giving about 38 miles an hour. 6 1/4 axle ratio. So as I say, it's very much pretty box standard really. Having been rebuilt a few years ago by Whittles at Leicester. The big folding 50 tonner as we call it, tiny pin. This is rather sort of a special machine in a lot of ways. It was a one-off machine built for LV Brooksman's heavy haulage and lifting specialist at Hull. Quite a few interesting features about this machine. As I've just said, it's a one-off machine which makes it rather unique, but it's got a Gardner 6LW engine which apparently was found not to have enough power for the job it was supplied for. So after it was out of the guarantee, Mr. Brooksman took it to Sims fuel injection people at Hull, and they fitted a turbocharger in the exhaust manifold, which was rather sort of unknown at that time in the 1950s. There was actually 2 vehicles done like this being the first one, the second for being done for Tainton Wild Sugar Refiners at Liverpool. Other features about it, it's a 12-speed epicyclic gearbox being operated by 2 levers, not the normal air control like in the later phones. The rear axle 6 1/4 diff ratio, but it has this special hub reduction on the back, one on each side, which sort of forerunner of the double reduction hub as it's known today. The only difference being you have to stop and get out, put a little Tommy bar in this little red hole at the side, and turn it round half a turn to engage the low ratio. Thus giving you, instead of your 12 gear ratio through your 12-speed box, you've then got 24 forwards, and 2 reverse ratios, which makes it able to pull sort of a mountain down if you so wished. Model number 8's FGHT 650, which means FG type haulage tractor, 6-cylinder 50 ton. Mr. Brooksbanks, in his wisdom, a few years after he bought a 50 ton winch for the back of it, which was the same winch as fitted into the timber tractors. We have the winch, but we've never got round to fitting it again. And when we bought the vehicle from him, he was replacing this one with a 100 tonner. And he took the winch out to put in the 100 tonner, which he never did. You know, into the work involved, it's quite a mammoth task. And he's stripping the gearbox down to fit the 4-speed power takeoff and everything. So it's just never got round to fitting it on the vehicle. Manchester truck, it's a very rare, unique truck. I think there's about 3 or 4 in existence. It was built by a firm known as Willis Overland Crossley at Heaton Chapel, Manchester. It's not quite sure at the moment what connection it has with Crossley, because Crossley buses were built in that area. Crossley stationary engines were also being built at the time. It has a slight American connection with the Willis. Many people will remember in later years the famous Willis Jeep, which took part in a lot of the war. It's a very, very interesting truck in many ways. As can be seen, the engine has to be hand-cranked. It's only on a 6-volt electrical system, no starters or anything in those days. There is actually provision for a starter, but this vehicle has never fitted with one. I don't know how you go about finding one now, but it does start quite easily by hand. We're having the autovac petrol system where the autovac sucks the petrol out of the tank. So once you've cranked it, a couple of times, the vacuum's there and suck the petrol up, and it's just gravity into the carburetor. So, as long as you've got a good spark, you're fairly sound at starting this type of vehicle. It's got a 4-cylinder, 22.5 horsepower side valve engine, which is half water cooled and half air cooled, which is quite sort of unique. The fan is driven by a flat belt, which was quite common in the older vehicles, not as with modern vehicles with a modern V-belt. It's a 3-speed crash gearbox, open prop, which this particular era of vehicle didn't have a right lot of. They used to have the torque tube with the prop shaft totally enclosed. Normal back axle on artillery wheels. Interesting feature of the sort of bodywork, it has the old railway style windows in the cab where you pull up with the strap, instead of the more common wind up and wind down windows, which is quite sort of quick and easy in a lot of traffic conditions. The bodywork is, actually a B1 1300 weight tonner, 1300 weight tipper. It's a Clayton DeWander hand-operated rack-type tipping gear, which can be seen as you have to wind it up by hand and wind it down by hand. I don't know quite what the modern-day driver would make of that operation. It was originally used for delivering miners home coal in and around our local area. As can be seen by the registration HL, it's a Wakefield area registration of the early days. We're not quite sure about the year of the vehicle because we know it was registered in 1930, but the consensus of opinion is it could even be earlier than that. The records are a little bit unsure of it. But as I say, it was used for delivering miners home coal. They're used for a local coal haulage man. My father's boss bought it off the coal chap when he packed up with his business. Unfortunately, my father's boss, Mr. Dean, died, so it was sort of left in his transport contractor's yard, just basically to rot. Father saw it in the early days, so late 50s and very early 60s, and bought it to restore it. And then when he bought the Foden steam wagon, he sort of lost interest in the Manchester.